there are still people that are hurt. There are still people that can't talk their feelings through, and it's sad that they don't have another outlet other than that. But for me, the only thing that I could fathom is that they are still hurting from something, and I just wish that, they need what we have. I mean, there's nothing else I could think of.
Some blacks have a false sense of ownership and carrying stuff and believing in an eye for an eye, or my right to have what I didn't work for. And that carries over or correlates or transfers, or it produces as to whereas towards another race, you shouldn't be here because this should be mine, or you shouldn't be allowed to do this because I wasn't allowed to do this when I first got here. So where's my ownership? Where's my 40 acres and a mule? So the anger and everything why was it that you can blow up a church with girls in it in Birmingham, Alabama, and nothing happened? Or why is it that nothing happens to you? So they find these things to be justifiable because this is what happened to us once. To say it's justifiable to do another human being like that? No. Not at all. No. Not at all. Nothing about those crimes that you just mentioned will give you 40 acres and a mule. Nothing about those crimes will be is what has been done to us cannot be reconcilable, and doing that won't get you nowhere.
Those were some pretty especially that very last one.
Yeah.
Pretty gruesome. It almost makes cases like it was a pretty gruesome crime, and can you only imagine, especially that last couple, Christopher and Channing, with their parents. Their parents and their friends and their colleagues. I can only imagine.
In 2007.
And this was in 2007. In January of 2007. They had just got through celebrating Christmas. They just spent New Year's holiday together. And before you know it, 5 African Americans carjack them, kidnap them, take them to an isolated house, and torture them to death. When I heard that story, and all these stories are horrible, all of them, but there was only one instance where I read off where someone actually died. All the rest of them were assaulted. As African Americans, why do you think that these types of stories are not covered? Why do you think that these types of stories were not brought to the forefront, such as stories like Rodney King or the Trayvon Martin case, or other infamous cases in history involving an African American, the death of an African American, or the incarceration of an African American? If you want to talk about hate crimes, that last one I read, and all of these, black students assaulting Asian students at a Philadelphia high school, a black man and an Asian man assaulting a white boy, a white student, because he's white. They're trying to seek revenge for slavery. 5 African Americans torturing and bludgeoning a white couple to death. Why do you think these types of stories are not brought to the forefront?
I mean, Ed, if I may, and from my upbringing, that's not acting black. That's not acting black. That is not black. Mm-hmm. That is not what being black is about.
Mm-hmm. I seriously want to know, why do you think? Because this is some tragic stuff. Mm-hmm. And people were being placed in the hospital. As far as the situation with the African American students assaulting these Asian students, there were Asian students who had to have nasal surgery because they could no longer breathe. There were some Asian students who say they were hunted throughout the school by African American students in a series of, quote, nightmarish ordeals. That's how it was described in the report that I read. Why do you think that these cases are not brought to national attention? They're just as violent, they're just as tragic, and they're just as sad, and they are still hate crimes.
Because I think when you think in terms of hate crimes, what the origin is other races against black people.
Mm-hmm.
So for media's sake, is keeping the victim the victim.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing I can think of that makes sense. I can't think of any other reason why this hasn't been blown up, because this is a big thing. You can't just hurt somebody because of their color. This is ridiculous. That's something.
Then Maseshi, I want to know, why do you think these cases have not been brought to national attention?
I mean, I can't speak in detail about the other ones that you've said, because regardless, there is no reason they should have done like what they did.
Mm-hmm.
But I know for the Trayvon case, like, it was the case of, a delay of information, communication,
absolutely,
and whatnot that was being relayed to his parents. And I don't know in full detail, but just the whole, everything just seemed just wrong. And what happened with those that you talked about were wrong, but we know just in detail what was talked about in the Trayvon, so we can't really speak about those other ones, but we know they're just as bad. But I have no idea why they're not. I guess the media just picks what they feel is suitable for the time, what is gonna be, maybe, I hate to say it, but feed politics and stuff like that too, because everything is political. I mean, even a lot of the media stations are partial anyway, so yeah.
I notice, I'm looking around the room, I notice all of your heads are bowed in different emotions: sadness, anger, hurt, confusion. Talk to me. Tell me what's going through y'all's heads.
Well, honestly, to answer your question, I really, nothing comes to mind as to why it wouldn't get as much national attention as some other cases, with so many aspects and variables that go into what is actually shown, so that, like Ms. Brown was saying, a depiction of the victim will stay the victim. And I think that does play a part in it, because I've never heard, other than maybe a Hispanic situation, I can't remember what was it. I remember his last name was Gonzalez. That's the only time I remember something as to where you show someone else being a victim. But as far as a Caucasian American being in that particular situation and looked at as the victim of a hate crime, I no reason, and I don't understand why it wouldn't get as much national attention, because that is horrible. That is horrifying. That is, being a parent in that particular situation, I wouldn't want to be a parent in that particular situation, because nobody knows what they would have done being placed in that particular situation when your child has been treated this way and killed.
Do you think that the parents, especially of that last white couple that I mentioned, Channing Christian and Christopher Newsom, and the parents of people like Emmett Till, both of them were hunted down, tortured, and beaten to death. Do you think that both sets of parents, the parents of all sets of parents, the parents of Channing Christian and the parents of Christopher Newsom and the parents of people like Emmett Till, should they all feel the same way?
Well, definitely, because I definitely feel, I'm not a parent, but I definitely know that that's a parent's worst dream, to ever have to see bury their child. That's definitely not something you would want to see, a life that you help bring in, and have to see it go to. That's definitely, I'm very sure they felt the same. So I want to know from all of you,
the African American community has had this long history of wanting to be accepted, wanting to be included, excuse me, and wanting to be. We want other people to include the African American community in their endeavors. Do you think that the same rules apply in the African American community as them, African Americans, including other people, in their endeavors?
No, you mean do you think that the same rules apply?
I think the same rules apply? Do African Americans try to embrace that same sense of diversity upon others as African Americans would like other races of people to do for them?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that,
why not?
You know, I think that when you're, you know, it goes to many things. It goes to pride, it goes to anger, it goes to protection, it goes to like security blanket. I think that African Americans as a whole want to preserve this because for so long we had no control over this. And, you know, today I feel like, you know, we want to hold it so tight and hold it so close, whereas others perhaps they're cool now in present times, and so they're more open. Does that make sense?
One of the things that was brought to my attention as well, well, actually, this is from a personal experience. For those of y'all who may not know, when I was 17 years old, I was a senior in high school, and I took a Caucasian girl to my high school prom. Yes, I did. She was a very good friend of mine, wonderful friend of mine. We were best friends senior year in high school. We haven't had the chance to speak since graduation. You know, for some reason we just kind of went our separate ways, but she was a good friend of mine my senior in high school. And I can remember, I have a picture of her in my wallet, and I noticed that if I'm around a group of African Americans, I'll pull out my wallet, and if they'll see that picture, they'll ask me, who is she? And I said, that's my high school prom date. And the first thing that the response I get from African Americans is, oh, you took a white girl to the prom. And a part of me, I'll get angry, and I'll look at that person and say, what's the problem with that? What's wrong with that? She was a friend of mine. I mean, we were friends with each other. What's wrong with that? And I still get that response even now as an adult. I'm 20 years old. I was 17 when I did that, and I'm 20 years old, and I still get that same response. And it disturbs me greatly that African Americans who are so wanting this desire for acceptance, this desire for inclusion, when it comes to people like me, African Americans or black people like me, who want to include other races of people in my endeavors, like taking a young lady of another race to the prom. Why do you think that occurs?
Well, I think it's definitely the whole case of pardon me. I think it's definitely like fearing what you don't understand. Not understanding other people's cultures, or trying to immerse yourself or understand how people react or act in different situations and why they do certain things or whatnot, because you often find there are a lot of African Americans or just black people in general, or anyone of any culture actually, who don't even like the idea of even dating or marrying outside their culture. It's not just black people, it's everybody. Everyone's just used to what they've been raised around and whatnot. So if you haven't been raised around a lot of different people, diverse backgrounds, you tend to just seclude yourself to the norm of what you're used to. And I think it's sad because really, like, there's so much, like, I'm just a person who thinks there's so much more out there than just sticking to what you think is normal. Why not embrace what other people are thinking? Try and be more open-minded. You can still be open-minded and have your own independent view at the same time. You know, so I don't think anything is wrong with like